As you can see from the title, today's video is about Rey's so-called training. Now, why do I refer to it that way? Well, because there's been quite a bit of debate on just what kind of training she had or didn't have when she was on Octo to meet with Luke Skywalker. I mean, in one sense, people are just calling it training, but I think if you take a close look at just what happened on that planet, I think there's sort of a point of debate. I think you could take issue with claims that there was some kind of training or education. So at any rate, we're going to break it all down. We're going to look at it in detail. Went back, watched the video, broke it down into detail. We're going to talk about it today. So let's get right to it. All right, so first of all, it has to be said right off the bat that this idea of training has been sort of conflated with the idea of lessons. That's the first very important point here, because when we think of going to somebody, a master, to get training, we think back to like Karate Kid, where you meet the master and he's reluctant, and then says, I don't take students, and then they finally take the student, and then on the first day they're doing some really mundane, arcane, boring type skill, and the student is saying, I didn't count on this wasn't what I thought was going to happen, and then the master says, no, but this is part of it, if you can't get past this, blah blah blah, and then they keep working toward finally doing some meaningful type of education and training, right? So this is our mindset when we think of classical master student training, but that's not what happened here. And let's get right into it. So first off, Rey goes to Octo. She doesn't know what she's going to expect. She meets up with a albeit grumpy Luke Skywalker, and he's just salty from the get-go. Has nothing to do, doesn't want to have anything to do with his lightsaber, nothing like that. And look, he's saying you came to the wrong place. If you thought I was going to help you, you were misguided, because I'm not in the game anymore. I'm not about that life anymore. So I'm not, I don't consider myself a Jedi or connected to the Force, so I don't think I can really help you there. So obviously he's reluctant, and Rey's there, and she's persevering. She's not really taking no for an answer. And so let me give you one of her quotes. She says, "We need the Jedi Order back. We need Luke Skywalker." And then at one point, as part of that little exchange at the end of it, he says, "Go away." Basically, right? So she continues to follow him around. So he says to her, "You're wasting your time. I'm not coming off my stance here. I'm just not really looking to get back involved with things." So eventually they go to the temple, and she sees the history of the Jedi. She sees the Jedi books, and that's where he says, "Look, who are you?" And then she explains a little bit here and there. He says, but why are you here? And then she gets into her little mini backstory. So at the end of it, he says, "Look, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry you came all the way out here. Sorry to have wasted your time, but I'm just not looking to get involved in this particular situation. I've been really disenchanted with Jedi life, So that's at the point that Luke goes on to the Millennium Falcon. He sees the dice. He gets all sentimental. Then he has an encounter with R2-D2, and R2-D2 shows him the little old school projection of Leia asking Obi-Wan Kenobi for help, etc., etc. And that's when Luke seems to sort of have a change of heart, albeit. And then in that next scene, he's sort of standing over Rey. She's asleep, and that's when he finally announces for the first time. He says, tomorrow at dawn, 3 lessons. I will teach you the ways of the Jedi. That's how he comes at it. Now, mind you now, he says 3 lessons. He doesn't say tomorrow at dawn we're going to start some really intensive, rigorous training. He says he wants 3. Now, if you're Rey and you just hear him talk about 3 lessons in your mind, you're thinking, oh wow, we're going to do some like hardcore training. That, you know, if you hear that's your presumption, okay. But she was in for probably a tiny bit of surprise, because that wasn't entirely what she found herself getting herself into. Alright, so long story short, we get to the next day, and he announces, okay, he says, lesson 1. Now, I didn't quite, I didn't remember all that. I didn't really recall the distinction he was making between lessons and training, and frankly, I think most people who look back on that whole little planet situation, they weren't really nuancing a distinction between lessons and training. But I think it comes a little clear as time goes on. At any rate, this is how he starts the first quote-unquote lesson. All right, lesson 1: sit here, legs crossed, close your eyes, breathe. Now reach out. And that's when they go into this little comical exchange, because she puts out her hands and then he smacks her hands with like this huge blade of grass, or wheat, or whatever you want to call it, and says, oh, look, reach out with your feelings. And that's when she has all these visions and everything, and she doesn't see him in the visions. And she says, oh, that's odd. Like I didn't see you. And well, that's when she concludes that he's closed himself on the Force. But in conclusion to that little encounter, this is what he says, and I'm quoting, "This is the lesson, that Force does not belong to the Jedi. To say that if the Jedi die, the light dies, is vanity." Can you feel that? And that's essentially the conclusion of that lesson, lesson number 1. Now, mind you, that lesson started at 48 minutes into the film. It ended at 50 minutes and 15 seconds. So that lesson took all of 2 minutes and 15 seconds. That's lesson number 1 of 3. Okay, 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So here we are, off to a really rousing start of lessons and training. So, moving on, the next time we see any type of encounter of worth is when Rey's out there. I'm going to say, I was about to say training with the staff, but that would be overstating the encounter, because really what she was doing was playing around with the staff. She was doing her own little moves, her own little motions, no guidance. She wasn't working off any kind of book or instructional video or anything like that. She was just doing her own thing, playing around, having fun, just like she was in the driveway of the house or something like that, or in a bedroom, making up her own moves and stuff against a rock, not against a person, not against like a caretaker who volunteered to help her out, with just a person. And then after doing that, she gets, after doing that for a few minutes, apparently, she gets bored and then gets a lightsaber and starts doing it with a lightsaber, and that's when she cuts the rock and then it falls down. Now, mind you, Luke is there, but he's watching this, right? He's watching it from a distance. He's not there. He's not talking to her. He's not mentioning nothing. He's not commenting on nothing. He's not reacting to nothing. He's just like staring there, period, motionless, right? He's literally, and it's not even like he's just standing by, observing, taking mental notes or anything like that. He's literally a good 15 to 20 meters away, at least. You go back and watch, you'll see. It's not like he's just a few steps away. He's a ways away, right? And then at the end of it, he just literally walks around, turns around, walks up the steps of that little mountain side, right? Just literally walks away. Now, mind you now, if you watch that on a DVD, I mean, I have a Blu-ray and everything, but if you watch that little scene there, the DVD chapter, if you will, is called Lightsaber Training. Now, let's be honest, guys. Let's be fair. If you were to see that little chapter and said lightsaber training, that's not what you had in mind. That's not what you would have expected to be the lightsaber training. If you told somebody, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Octo to get some lightsaber training with Luke Skywalker," and then the other person's eyes would like light up and everything, and you came back and said, "Oh wow, so tell me about the lightsaber training with Luke Skywalker." I said, "Well, I mean, I was there, like for about 3 minutes, and I was like using the staff and doing my own thing, and then I had the lightsaber and I cut a rock." Yeah, and then what did Luke say? No. Luke was like, he was like up on a hill, watching. Okay, then what did he say about your form and stuff like? No. He really didn't say anything. He just walked away. And that's the end. That's literally the end of her lightsaber training for the whole time. The whole time she was on there, that's what is being called her lightsaber training. Now there was a little exchange. I'm going to get to that later, but that was supposedly her formal training. I mean, it wasn't called a lesson. Now I'm not going. This is where the confusion is. This was not one of the official lessons that he announced he was going to give her. This was just like a little experience on her own time. I'm not even going to even call it training, because I don't know what your definition of training is, but that's not my definition of training. To me, what she was doing was like self-study, except she really didn't have materials to self-study. You know what I'm saying? This is like you going shooting baskets in your backyard and in your driveway, and your mom or your dad are like in the kitchen watching from the kitchen door, watching you, but not saying a word, just watching. That's it. Now that's not even training. That's not even guidance. That's not even instruction. They're not giving no tips. They're not saying to raise your elbow. They're not saying you're putting too much weight on your back foot or nothing like that. How does that even qualify as training? Self-training? They should relabel it lightsaber self-training, because otherwise it's totally misleading, totally mischaracterizing what she was doing there. Let's be fair. Let's be fair. And again, that's not even one of the formal lessons he marketed to her that he was going to give her, right? So much for that training. So fast forward. This is ostensibly one of the formal lessons. This is lesson 2, and the DVD chapter caption calls this Luke's history lesson. Now, I mean, to say history lesson, you know, to me and you would be like just a loose characterization of someone just giving a backstory on something. But again, they're now sort of conflating this. I guess we're going to presume this is a formal lesson number 2, a history lesson. No kind of physical training, more philosophical, historical stories, basically. Okay, so this is where he says, you know, now that they're extinct, the Jedi are romanticized, deified. But if you strip away the men and look at their deeds, the legacy of the Jedi is failure, hypocrisy, hubris. At the height of their power, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire, and wipe them out. Who is the Jedi Master who was responsible for the training and creation of Darth Vader? Right? So they have this discussion, they go back and forth. Rey, at the end of it, basically, look, I need someone to show me my place in all this. And, by the way, you didn't fail Kylo. Kylo failed you. I won't. End of scene. Alright. Now that started like at 59 minutes 18 seconds, went to an hour 2 minutes 5 seconds. So that scene lasted a little under 3 minutes. And ostensibly that's lesson 2 out of 3. So so far she's had 2 lessons, each one less than 3 minutes long. And this is the big, highly talented lessons that he said he was going to give her so far, right? And then you know, later Rey has a, you know, telepathic connection with Kylo, and he gives her his history lessons, so to speak. Then she goes to the Mia Cave, and by this time Luke has reconnected to the Force, and that's when he stumbles on to Rey and Kylo having a very deep connection and touching fingers and everything, and he goes ballistic and blows the wall out and all that type of stuff, if you remember that. And he says, "Oh, stop!" And then Rey says, "Is it true? Did you murder him?" And you know, Luke is upset. He says, "Look, leave this island now." And that's when he marches off, and Rey says, "Stop, stop," because he's walking away. She's following him. She's saying, "Stop, stop. Hold on for a second." And Rey knocks him to the ground, and then Rey swings at Luke with, I guess, like her staff, and then Luke responds with the Force summoning, looks like a lightning rod. I thought it was first a branch, but watching it again, it was metallic, so it seemed to be like a random lightning rod that he snaps off and summons into his hand, and then they're sort of going back and forth with her using the staff, and he's using this rod, so to speak, parrying back and forth, no more than about 10-15 seconds to be honest. And then he makes a move that basically renders the staff out of her hand, and then in response she summons a lightsaber. She lights up a lightsaber, and to my recollection, she doesn't swing at him, or they don't have any kind of fight. Obviously it can't, because he doesn't have a lightsaber. There's only one lightsaber to go around, so he's basically defenseless. In fact, he reaches out his hand. I mean, I think the implication is that he was instinctively reaching for his lightsaber but didn't have one. I think that was the implication. And at the that's when he gives sort of the revised history, so to speak, kind of tweaks his story about encountering Kylo Ren and how he had like a very disturbing thought about wanting to take matters in his own hand, but then it was fleeting, and he changed his mind almost immediately, but it was too late. Blah 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 blah. And then at the end of it, Luke basically says, "Look, don't do this. I'm out of it. Stop coming after me." And Rey offers Luke the lightsaber. So look, take your lightsaber, come back with me. Let's get it on. Let's do what we gotta do. And Luke basically declines the offer and leaves. Flies off in the Millennium Falcon. That's it. That's their last encounter. She's gone. All right. So look, I described, lesson 1, lesson 2. Where was lesson 3 in all this? What was this supposed to be lesson 3? It was not. It wasn't anything planned. It was like a off-the-cuff, spontaneous, impulsive, almost tantrum, so to speak, right? Just an impromptu, impulsive tantrum encounter. Yeah, they parried for 10 seconds, if that, with staffs. So don't even try to call that any kind of battle training or lightsaber training or nothing like that. He just blocked a couple of blows. That was it. Don't even try to call that training. So that was the last encounter. So was there a lesson 3? I don't even know. So he marketed himself. Look, I'm gonna give you 3 lessons. I'll meet you tomorrow. Blah blah blah. First of all, not even getting into the quality of the lessons. Not even going there. Just in terms of the contract, he served up what I count as like 2 lessons, and I don't even think he delivered on the 3rd. Now, I guess in his defense, he would say, "Look, I was all prepared to give her a 3rd lesson, but she just flew off before I could give her the lesson number 3. That was actually the lesson where I was really going to give her everything. Now, that's where we was going to really get into like the deep stuff and the deep training and the battling. She just had to go through these little 2-minute lessons, to get to the 3rd. I mean, I guess that's what he would say, in his defense, or his publicist would say in his defense. But I only count 2 lessons. All right, this thing where she's training with a rock instead of Master Skywalker, I'm not even counting that as any kind of lesson or any kind of training. So let's scratch that off the list. So as far as I can see, he said, "Look, I'm going to give you 3 lessons. I only count 2. And those 2 were under 3 minutes long." So that was the extent of Rey's encounter with Luke. I'm not even going to refer to it as training. They were more life lessons than anything. Now he's going to say, "Well, look, I didn't promise her training with the Force." Mind you, he never taught her how to harness the Force and to move things and use, the Force to manipulate matter or mind control or any of these things that the Force can do. He didn't even touch any training with the Force. Now you're gonna say, "Oh no, but there was a point that she lifted the little pebbles, blah blah blah." No, she did that on her own because her emotions were so riled up from the visions. That light just came out instinctually, whatever you want to call that. That wasn't Luke's doing, so don't give him any kind of credit for that. He didn't give her any kind of training with the Force or harnessing the Force or controlling her raw talent and raw powers or anything like that. He basically gave her 2 brief philosophical life lessons about Jedi history, and that's it. So I can't call that training. I'm not going to call that training. The most you got now, that's it. That's it. The most valuable thing to come out of all that was not even meeting Luke Skywalker, not even getting the little life lessons that he gave. Probably the most valuable thing to come out of going there was her leaving with the Jedi books. Right? That's probably the most valuable part of her going there. Not anything that Luke did or said. Because she got those Jedi books probably are more valuable than the 5 minutes that she spent with Luke Skywalker talking about history. He spent most of that time just talking about how he messed up with Kylo Ren, by the way. It was less about Jedi and Jedi life and ways of the Jedi and being a great Jedi and being the perfect Jedi and the proper Jedi. It was less about that, and then more of his just recounting the story with Kylo Ren and then giving the little revisionist history about with Kylo Ren and blah blah blah, right? So for her to leave with the book, that's probably even more valuable, because then she can even go beyond what Luke Skywalker knows. She can go deeper into the past history and the writings and everything like that. So if you want to say, well, was it a waste of time? Well, it would have been a waste of time were it not for the fact that she came away with them books. So as far as the title of this video, Rey's so-called training, at the end of the day, I decline to really refer to that as any kind of training. In fact, he never referred to it as he never said, I'm going to train you. He said, I'm going to give you 3 lessons. From my analysis, from my recounting what they did scene by scene, he didn't even deliver on that. So I will call that a breach of contract. I would say that he didn't deliver on his promise to give 3 lessons of training, and the lessons that he gave really were nominal at best, not befitting a guy who has a vast amount of knowledge. Now, mind you, he used to run like a little, I'll call it a Jedi Academy for lack of a better word, but you know what I'm talking about. He was training them young guys, Ben Solo and another bunch of young kids. He was training them like he had like a little business out of it. All right, so it's not like, well, he's not used to training people. He's really a loner, blah, blah, blah. No, he actually was running a little camp of Jedis for we don't know how exactly long, but it had to be months, maybe even years. So he wasn't a novice to training people, but he didn't kind of give her any kind of advanced, special, legitimate training, and that's a shame. So that's what I got today, guys. Rey's so-called training. No, it was not training. Give that a thumbs down. All right, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.